Hello, everyone. Welcome to our sixth and final leadership podcast study call for this round, at least. Tonight, we're going to talk about how to treat our leaders as leaders. And as people are hopping on, I would love to hear from everybody. I know this may have been a new kind of concept for you. This was just a good refresher, but I know that all of the leaders came away with some sort of action step or some sort of takeaway from this call or from the whole thing. So if you want to share what that was for you in the comments to just kind of get us going, and as we let people hop on, that would be awesome. And remember, if you're sitting there thinking, oh yeah, I could share that, but that's no big deal, or whatever your little brain is telling you. She mentioned that in the end of this podcast, that don't let your brain tell you those things. No matter what you're learning or what you're thinking, it is important. Your voice has value. So please share. But since I guess we're already a couple minutes in, so I'll go ahead and just kind of jump in. She starts off by pointing out that people will generally rise to the level of your expectations. So we want to treat and relate to our leaders like they are fellow leaders, like the fellow leaders that they are, to help empower them to confidently step into that role. And then the whole podcast was about those steps, which is so helpful. So number one was empowering and never enabling, and giving them, not just giving people the answers, which I think we have learned, but helping them figure out where to go and find those answers. Whether we have the answer or not, we're going to empower them with the steps. Like, where I would go to find that answer is the team page, or our project broadcast stuff, or the new Plexus Go app is so good. I've been using that a lot more. You can go and use the search feature, and I've been blown away by that. And then as they are doing those things and they're learning those things, we're going to encourage them to also share what they're learning and be aware as leaders what is being asked regularly, and creating those resources, whether it's in our notes and our team page, the project, or not, I said project broadcast, I meant boards. The boards app, that makes more sense. But sharing those things. And I know a lot of people have been using boards. I haven't quite figured that whole thing out yet, but I would love to hear what some of those things are for you guys. What are your favorite places to store resources that are easily accessible to help yourself and help your leaders figure that out? I'm going to go over to these comments. Boards, said Hannah. Melody, we're glad you're here, video or not. The app and board. Love it. And yes, you can still use the old-fashioned notes in your phone. Whatever is working and whatever is easily accessible, I think that's super important. And then just helping your team know how to do those things too. And so your leaders can duplicate that down. I also loved the answering their questions with a question. I like how she said Jesus answered questions with questions, and that, he totally did that. That gets you out of the emotional brain and into the logical part of your brain, so that you can think and come up with those answers. And that's just super helpful always, and it helps to empower them again and boost their confidence as leaders. Does anyone have any thoughts or anything to add at this point? feel like I'm like blowing through.
I liked how she gave the example, like, how do you think you should do it? Or how do you think you should say it? Like, come, like, like you said, answer questions with questions, but then like asking them, what do you think you should do? And then whenever they get, kind of talk through it, it's like, yeah, that's so true. That's a great idea. That's exactly what you should do. So like you said, it boosts that confidence so that they're more likely to feel more comfortable doing it themselves the next time.
Yes. Yeah, I love that.
Well,
Any others on that?
I'll say something. I think it's also helping people to think more like entrepreneurs and owners of their business versus the employee mindset, where it's like, okay, boss, tell me what to do. And I think sometimes our people on our teams can fall into that trap, especially if you're a creative leader with good ideas. Sometimes they lean too heavily on us as leaders, and where we sometimes need to take the step back and be like, okay, well, what is your own intuition telling you that you need to do? You take the next step, so that difference in mindset of employee mentality versus entrepreneur, which entrepreneur speaks to me of being able to run with your own creative ideas, always thinking of new things to implement, taking a step back and evaluating your business and like, okay, where can I shift and pivot? And I know some of that comes more naturally to some people more than others, but it can be learned, So that's one little angle I thought of.
I definitely love that about this whole process has been that it is learnable. We're not born this way or born
it's out because there's
leaders. We can learn it, and that is so encouraging to me as a leader. So I'm going to move on to the next little section if anyone has any thoughts. And then, Mandy, if you want to watch the comments, because I am on my phone, so I can't really do both at the same time. I guess I could, but it would distract me. So number 2 is asking their opinion on things. And I really thought like this point was super eye-opening, because it's like, where am I right now? And where do I fall in my leadership ability here? And not so I can see myself and I can see the others that I'm leading. But and those points were the low achievers don't seek advice. They avoid communication, try to figure it out by it themselves. And then the average achievers ask opinions only of superiors, and they're focused on their own status and the production of the whole production thing. And they only listen to people that are ahead of them. And then high achievers listen well to everyone and care about people in general. They care about adding value to others. They care more about the people, or as much at least about the people as the money that they're making. And I love that we can see those things and be able to point out like what are the action steps that can be taken to excel in those areas. Any thoughts?
Can I make a comment on that?
Yes.
I don't know if anyone else can relate with this, but sometimes, or I have, I guess, repeatedly throughout my Plexus journey had this kind of weird fear that if I just kind of have a mindset of like, I can glean from everyone, I can learn from everyone. If someone's having success, I should say, ooh, tell me more about that. I'm curious how that's going, and then implement it. I always kind of had this weird sense of, well, I should already know that. Or if they're doing really well, if they're doing really well, then like, I should already know that, or I should just be figuring that out and implementing that. Am I making any sense, y'all? Like, and I've even had this mindset sometimes when it comes to like complimenting people. Like someone walks in the room and they've got a great outfit on. I would like tell myself like not to say anything about it, just for fear of looking like a fangirl or something. Like, I don't know. I've just always kind of like kept quiet and not wanted to appear like too impressed by people. But I've really, really shifted that around a lot. And I think that it started with a couple of trips I went on with Megan Goff, where she was in the room with, superiors, peers, people ranked lower than her, and just had a complete mindset of like, ooh, you're doing that? Ooh, tell me more about it. I'm curious, like, how's it going? And then I would see her turn around and instantly duplicate it. And it kind of got me out of that funky place of like, not asking people, for wisdom and advice, and just asking more about what they're doing that's working. And that's a humility thing. I think it was some sort of a weird pride thing for me that I like didn't want to be seen asking people what was working well for them or complimenting them on something I saw working well for them. I wanted to look like I just had it all together, or I could figure it all out on my own. But I learned that from Megan really well, just like that whole high achievers listen well to everyone, and they seek out lots and lots of ideas, and they turn around and try them and, pivot and go from there. So anyway, that was just something I really resonated with.
I think that can be something that, especially starting out as like a lower level leader, is you don't see that always. Like, you're like, well, I need to be a good leader, so I've got to figure this out on my own. I mean, this is my perspective, and where I have found myself is like, oh, I should be able to do this. It's very much pride, but I should be able to do this, and I will figure this out on my own. And that's what good leaders do. But you don't necessarily, like, you take out that step of asking, just like rummaging around trying to figure all the things out yourself. And that's a huge time waster. And it's just obviously not the way to do it.
I wanted to add something to that, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So with kind of relaunching my business and relearning things and how to do things well this time around, I think I really have enjoyed listening to this podcast just in general. Like, everything that I have learned from this and gleaned from this has been amazing, but especially going back through and re-listening to this section of the series. And, I'm not only am I learning how to be a good, business builder under somebody, but also how to then duplicate that and learn that how to build downwards as well. And I think that especially this year, going through the low achievers and the high achievers and average achievers, I've always been one that I'm okay with asking people, but I don't need to know. Like, I know I can figure it out myself, but I'm going to ask you to make you feel better. And I think it's kind of similar to what Carissa was saying. It's very like a prideful thing, if that makes sense. And I've really enjoyed not knowing anything about the compensation plan now. I've enjoyed not understanding how we do things, because it's making me actually have to dig in and figure out what is going to be the best way to do that. And then implementing it from this standpoint, like how to build, I've been spending the last 3 years trying to learn how to build a business with my husband outside of Plexus, and where those failures were. And it's been so helpful coming into this business with that mindset of, this is a business. This is something I'm building. I have to implement certain things in a certain way in order for this to be able to duplicate and work and grow. And this just caters into all of that as well.
I love that. Does anyone else want to have any tidbits? Okay. Well, so the next step, Megan.
Well, I had to take Abigail potty really fast. I was just going to kind of tag off of what Carissa said. One of the fears that I have had to work through is feeling like I'm missing something. Like, what piece am I missing? Like, and trying to overanalyze and analyze, and and sometimes taking everyone else's ideas, like sometimes that can be really helpful, and you go and implement someone else's thing that they've already thought through. It's working for them. Perfect. But I had gotten to a space of almost over consuming what other people were doing with their teams. And that can be like, just because someone else does something for their team and it works for them doesn't necessarily mean it would work for my team. Like, we know our teams. And so I think really learning to tap into our own intuition as business leaders is really important. And it's I think it was something I learned from Hemingway, really, is to not always depend on others to tell you what next to do, but to pray and think, like, what does my team need right now? And then the ideas that come, like, let yourself be creative, like get a white sheet of paper and write down some ideas. Or when you are in that creative space, for me, it's when I'm walking, when I'm in the shower, or when I'm doing dishes, and maybe laundry counts also. But those spaces where I feel a little bit more free in my brain, sometimes there's just like a little idea that'll pop in my mind. I'm like, oh, that's perfect. I'm going to go implement that. And so give yourself permission to, in seasons where you do have to glean off of others, do it. It's the best thing ever. In busy seasons with babies, it's been such a blessing to be able to glean from others and implement what other people have created. And then other seasons, it's good to tap in and like lead your team, train your team, speak to your team with your own heart, so.
Okay, that gave me another thought that I want to share. This week, I heard Chris use the phrase thought work. And we talk about thought work in the work we do with taking our thoughts captive and practicing new elevated thoughts, but he was referencing it in terms of sitting down and thinking your thoughts for a little while. And he was talking about how that's work. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, I feel like we really need to own this as leaders, that like, sometimes I need to sit down at my desk and do some thought work. And I need to take that time. And Brittany Howard says this all the time too, that reflection is how you gain wisdom. And so like sitting down and considering it work to ask yourself the question, okay, what does my team need right now? And that doesn't mean that when you figure out what they need, you have to then go create all the resources from scratch. No, you can probably find some great ones to utilize and plug in with. But so often I feel like you said, Megan, that when I am collecting a lot of ideas from people and then just instantly applying them willy-nilly, it can feel scattered. It can feel really not focused. So taking the time and just being like, this is thought work time. I am reflecting on what is needed for my personal business. Sometimes that's what it is. It's like, how do I get my personal business growing again? Okay, I need to host some in-person events. I need to build my level 1 base. Or, okay, I need to walk my people through how to post, how to reach out, how to go silver. Sometimes it's just conceptualizing that and then going, okay, now where am I going to find what's working now among my peers, or what resources are most current, but taking the time to think about that.
Yes, our brains can get so clogged with so many things if we don't take that time. It can just feel like we're approaching everything with chaos and don't actually get real things done. Love that. So I guess next we need to give them responsibilities. So I guess what are some I guess she gave some examples of responsibilities that we could give. They're kind of outside of like our regular IPAs. So helping to host team calls, helping just planning events, planning calendars, helping getting them plugged in to the team as a whole. I don't know, does anyone have any other examples for that? Or things that really work well for you?
And I'll just jump in. So, talking about responsibility, that kind of moves us into the next one. Number 4 was expect them to lead their own teams, taking that responsibility of leading their own teams, taking the ownership of, leading their teams. And so whatever you're doing with your level 1s, you expect them to do with their level 1s and teach theirs to do the same type of thing. I liked how she said we could implement this by the I do, we do, you do. So first time you're going to show them what to do, second time you're going to do it together, kind of as like a practice, be there to support them. And then the third time they should be doing it themselves. So I do, we do, you do, or what is it? See one, do one, teach one. It's kind of a similar idea as well. But just really, being a good leader and encouraging your teams to become leaders, expecting them to do that, which is going to create that duplication as well.
Can
And-
I would like
yeah.
to ask Charlotte too. Charlotte, do you have any examples of responsibilities you give your leaders? Because I feel like you're in this season of, you have some fresh baby leaders and you are kind of the mega leader, but you're trying to transfer that responsibility.
So I have individual messages with all of my leaders but I just have a group message for pretty much, we just put Zoom link and the Zoom schedule for our events. But I will message everybody individually and say, I'm looking for volunteers for this week's Zoom. And then we plan that out. But they've been really good about, saying, I can do this night, I can do that night, and starting their own 3-way conversations. And then I'll just ask them, how can I support you today? But I feel like years ago when I tried to the second someone said, I want to work this business, I put them in a group chat thinking, oh, we're going to all be in this chat. And then nobody ever responded. And so I think people sometimes get overwhelmed when they're first starting. It's by group chats, and just me making sure I communicate one-on-one and making sure how you were talking about, Carissa, communicating with them the way they need to be communicated, some the voice memoing or the texting, some are, really want you to call them and go over stuff. That's been really helpful.
Are those the same leaders, Charlotte, that you had?
What did you?
Are those the same leaders that you had from years ago that you grouped?
No,
with?
no.
These are new.
These are all new people, and but anytime I had immediately just put people in that thread without they don't respond. There's no responsibility to respond, and people get lost. So I want everyone to feel special, even though we are a team. If that makes sense,
I've
that we
noticed the same thing. As much as I want to be able to use chats as much as possible to get information out, or even just to have conversation, I have found it's the individual messaging. It doesn't feel as efficient, but it's more effective.
Yeah, so we put the actual hey, so-and-so's doing tonight, here's the link, because I don't want to have to always post links individually all the time, because I'm scared I'll forget somebody. But they'll reach out and be like, I couldn't find it, so they know there's the group message for that main thing. But I think even ourselves, we can get in so many of those group threads that you're oh, I meant to respond and then I forgot.
And chats are good for just a quick, hey, here's the link for the call. But I'm talking about things that we're wanting to hear feedback from. I feel like when I'm chatting with leaders on my team whose teams aren't really responding in a chat, where they're like, yeah, I told them in the chat, but nobody said anything, or nobody ever hops on the call. And I'm like, okay, you're going to have to personally invite them. It's more work, but it's more fruitful. So yeah. Okay. Thanks for clarifying that.
Yeah.
Another big example I have seen this is when someone is new and they're willing to share, and we are getting them on board to do a launch event in person or on social media. I have seen this happen before, where the brand ambassador kind of just assumes okay, it is, all on me to do this event for them. And they do not at all give that person responsibility in it. And so I think people do it for a lot of reasons. One, they may be afraid to scare their person away a little bit. And so they're like, oh, just do it all. Or maybe they think their person is going to have objections, which they might, they might be scared to go live in their party, or they might kind of freak out when you say, okay, you're going to stand up at the launch and tell your testimony, or, tell your why. But I am really, really big on that. When I'm leading someone, or when I'm doing a launch with someone, I am behind the scenes, doing a lot of like little chess moves and stuff. But as much as possible, I'm having them be the face of every invitation. I'm telling them to do posts to promote it. I'm telling them, okay, you're going to jump in the group and do an intro to welcome all the people, something like this, but it's going to be them. You're going to do the welcome and I'll do the live to say goodbye, or I'll do the live to welcome and you do the live to say goodbye. Or if we're in person, okay, so you'll talk first, you'll welcome everybody, you'll share why you're starting Plexus, and then I'll take it from there. Like I'm always giving them responsibilities and ownership kind of in just baby step fashion, but I'm trying to increase it as we go. One, because they need that ownership and leadership responsibility, but also it's not effective. Like I have never seen an event go really well when you just step in and do it all for your person. Like their people don't, at least not my experience, like their people don't really connect with my posts, my face. Like they want to know from their person.
Right. And I think that kind of even goes into the next couple of points that she makes about, you want to expect them to get outside of their comfort zone. So, that might be a hang up that we have, like, oh, we don't want to make them do that. But that's how you're creating, a new leader, is by encouraging them to get out of that comfort zone, asking them to be a part and help, do a live in part of their event. And it's how growth happens, if we're not uncomfortable, we're probably not growing, is what she said. And it's so true. What are some other examples can you guys think of that would kind of help people get out of their comfort zone and help them grow? Anything specifically?
This isn't another example, but I would just say it's true in parenting and it's true in leadership of teams, that people don't have anything to be proud of when they're just doing comfy, easy things. And there's really something to be said for helping people be proud of themselves. And like when I give my son a challenging task to do for me, and then I praise him and talk about what a big, strong man he's becoming and how like he is legitimately beaming with pride because I have actually given him something hard to do and he's delivered on it. And so I find the same thing to be true with my team, that if I just expect them to be babies who can't do anything hard, there's nothing to be like proud of. But if they actually do something that is hard, then I am giving them an opportunity to feel good about themselves in a way that they haven't prior to being on our team. Like maybe they've spent years and years just taking the easy road, and like here they've had an opportunity to take the high road and they've delivered on it. Anyway.
No, that's great. So true. Awesome. Anybody else? So, and then the next one, number 6, is teach them to respect your time. And I think that's I really resonated with this, just not only in Plexus, but in life and, working and things like that, is the importance of that. If you're constantly, you get a question, you get this, you get at this, and you're constantly right away on it. I mean, they're going to expect that, and it's going to send that message that they have to be that way too, if they want to be like you, almost. If you're seeing somebody that's successful, that's always on, no matter what, then you kind of think, oh, then I probably have to do that. And I know with Plexus, a lot of people are doing this for time freedom. And if they're seeing that they're going to have to constantly be spending all of their time on it, it's not really going to be inspiring. and of course you're going to hit burnout probably at some point, and however you respond to that. So I liked what Brittany said, where she says, when you have these boundaries in place, you give your team permission to do the same thing, and that is the freedom that they're looking for. So it's so important to set those boundaries. But then I always think of, it's like, what fear keeps you from doing that? Like, if you hear, oh, I have to set time boundaries, I have to set this, does anybody kind of be like, oh, but like, is there anything that holds you back from doing that? Like for me, I think about, well, what if I miss something? What if I don't get it quickly enough? Anybody else have any thoughts on that?
I do about that because I agree with you, Mandy, because you can't be on call 24/7. So I think having like, if someone's working towards a specific goal and I know it, I'll be like, this is the time I have to help you with combos. But if I'm not answering, this is where you can look for the answer, or this is someone else you can reach out to. Because I also think I want everyone to have time with their family too, and that, they have the balance. Sorry, Will has a lot to say too.
Oh, that's so true. I also like, she said, where she said, let a question sit, if, somebody asks you a question, you don't have to answer it immediately. You can gauge if it's something that, you got to help with quickly, but let it sit. And a lot of the time they are gonna figure it out themselves. Like it's something that they just need to look up. Maybe it was the last minute. Oh, I don't know. I don't have time. But then you give them the time and they'll figure that out as well. Does anybody have any examples of what they've already done to kind of help set some of those time boundaries that you couldn't, share with the rest of us that has been helpful for you?
I just have to say, like, I've struggled with the opposite end of the spectrum where I have like a healthy time boundary and maybe do let the question sit, but then never come back to it. So I think some leaders have to be aware on that side. And I'm actually getting a lot better about that in the last couple of years, but it took creating support systems and routines in my life that were really needed so that I could reduce the overwhelm.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to you also can't slip into just avoid mode.
Right.
Boundary is not the same as like avoidance. Chris has always said to me, you teach people how to treat you. And usually he says it in the context of, I'll be complaining about the way someone is treating me repeatedly. Like repeatedly, they treat me this way. And he always says, well, you teach people how to treat you, meaning you've been putting up with it. You've been rewarding it in some way. And that's why it's still going on. So that's a good little helpful tagline.
Yeah, I like that for sure. Anybody else? Any thoughts on that? Okay, we'll move along. We're going
Can I
over,
say
but that's
something?
okay. Oh yeah,
Sorry.
yeah.
Okay, well, I know this is a question because we have a group of a lot of really great leaders on here. So this is something that, I said that I'm learning how to sit with questions better. That's something, the skill that I'm working on getting better at. But what are y'all's thoughts on kind of, I want to be able to be there for potential customers coming in and people asking me questions and leads that I have. But if those people are going to be turning into potential business builders in the future, I don't want to set that expectation with them either. I want them to learn, like, I didn't answer you as quickly. You don't have to answer other people. But I also, from a sales standpoint, know, like, jump when I struggle sometimes with how to know and how to kind of read that and when to just let it sit and when to
Yeah. I mean, I have an idea that I haven't currently used, but it's something that's kind of, as I was listening to this, like that came to my mind, which I know some people do, is really set those work hours if you can, like if you have specific work hours, and then even with your customers, be like, hey, so I work from this time to this time on these days. And so if you have any questions, I'm going to be available. Or, you could set those expectations, but of course, with customers, you want to be able, if it's you kind of have to gauge those things. But I think if you set it from the beginning, it's probably, people are used to that, they're not necessarily used to you answering all the time until you do that. So that's my thoughts. I don't know, does anybody else have anything? Carissa put in there something that Allie Kent did a training on how she prioritizes responsiveness.
Yeah, it's like in the February focus series or something, Allie Kent, it was kind of a random one, but she was like, this is how I prioritize my level of responsiveness. If they're a potential, like I'm always going to respond quickly and to them first. If they're like a baby builder, that's kind of priority 2. And then more experienced workers, she still answers, but it's not as responsive as immediately. And I also think that the hover feature is really great. So like you hover over a message and you can see the entire message body. You don't click on it and open it and show it as read, but you hover and look at it. And if it's a question that they can find the answer to on their own, then you let it sit. if it's an emergency or somebody who's like, you know, a potential that you're wanting to sign up, or it's a new person that's like, hey, I'm loving my reset. Where do I find my referral link? You know, like hop on it. Iron is hot.
A lot of
Ooh,
great things in the
Charlotte-
chat. Yeah. I
Charlotte,
really-
keyword set up to where my team can text my business line and automatic. Oh,
You might need to do a training on that for us.
I paid someone to do that. I have an assistant, but the project broadcast and boards have like made everything so easy. It's so worth the investment.
Right.
I
So
agree
number,
with what Taylor
yeah, go
said
ahead.
too.
Yeah, she said, she's found calling that person's way faster than a text conversation that can go on and on and on. So that's true. You know, I do that too. Whenever I get a text, if you know it's going to go back and forth, just call, get it all out there.
I would say that the calling thing, especially with potentials, moves it so much faster. If I can get on the phone with someone, I can typically sign them up before we hop off, typically. I also say I totally didn't prioritize like Allie Kins taught in that series yesterday because I was hosting an event at my house. I had to make a Costco run, and then it was literally like when you give a mouse a cookie, we got home with literally the mother load. And you know, as you're putting stuff away, you're like reorganizing things. So like I hopped on my messenger at 6:15, and a gal that I met at Costco actually right before convention, she's like a dream team person. She was like connecting with me. She seems like a business owner, fitness gal in her 60s. And she had responded, hey, I'm gonna pop down, like drive an hour to my house for this Plexus event. And I missed the opportunity, you guys. She was like, it was too late, like by the time I'd responded to her. So learn from my mistake. Don't miss those combos. But it's okay. I'm reminding myself that that's the way it was supposed to be. I'm going to connect with her one-on-one and it'll be fine.
Yeah. All right. So number 7, challenge them in their thinking or in their goals when necessary. I like how she put it, push them to stretch and grow, but not off a cliff. So we kind of have to have that knowledge of, you know, how far can we push? But the important thing is, you know, making sure that you are pushing and helping your team grow. You know, always be thinking about, you know, is there something that's holding them back, you know, that with their mindset. And but just remembering too, she mentioned, what is your motive in this? So whenever you're helping them with goals or helping them with challenging them, remember to keep your motives in check as well. We're there to help them. It's not all selfishly to help you get your next goal, but ultimately, if you're focused on helping that person, it's going to help you too in the long run. So keeping that. And if you haven't looked at the worksheet on this, there's a great flow sheet that she gave us that you could really use, even if you're getting, you know, evaluate some conversations you've already had, but also you can use it to kind of help get you in the mindset of having those conversations too, which I really liked. Any thoughts on challenging them? All right. So moving on, number 8, expect them to add value always. So it's our responsibility as leaders, you know, to always add value, whether it's to your downline, to your sidelines. Our words and actions influence those around us. So it's important to always add value and not subtract that value. I liked how she reminded us, hey, if it doesn't add value, don't say it, don't post it. You know, always question before you add a comment or you say something to people. Is this going to add value? Because of course we're going to have those times where there's issues or concerns or that are going to come up, but it's important to know that you always are going to go up with those things. Always go your upline. Don't go down. Don't go to the side. Always add value when you're talking to those other people. And then also I liked how we did mention a little bit, be careful to spend time with people who add value to you and teach your leaders that as well. Not just in the business, but in your life as well. You know, you're going to have those down times where you're going to be negative. And if you have all these people that are feeding into that, that's not going to help. You want to have those people that you can go to and are going to help lift you back up. So just being aware of who you spend most of your time with. Any thoughts on that?
Did you guys see Genevieve's post about that today, about high performers on Instagram? She had some statistics. So what is her Instagram? Remind me. I think I'm going to find it. Yes. Okay. So she said, most people have no idea how important it is to surround yourself with high performers. Being around a high performer will increase your productivity by 15%. Being around low performers decreases your performance by 30%. So that wasn't even about like value subtractors. It was about like the people who are in activity and producing results. That just hanging around people who aren't high performers is going to lower your results by 30%.
Yeah, that's super eye-opening.
I'm like, I don't want to be the person who's lowering a high performer's results just by association.
Right. Well, and then number 9 just kind of goes along with that about adding value, encouraging, them to add value to the team as a whole, not just their own downline, which I think we do a really great job of. You're going to share your strengths with everybody on the team, because you're going to benefit from it as well. If everyone else is sharing their strengths, some of those things, maybe your weaknesses, that you're going to be able to, gain from others. But that was the last one. Sherri, did you want to add anything before we close it out?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I feel like, you guys have learned a lot, especially just from this section, but with so much, like, if you haven't already, take the time to really sit down and write, those 2 to 3 things that you want to implement right away. If anybody has anything that they know that they're going to implement, if you want to share that or put it in the chat or something, we would love to hear that as well.
We can probably talk about that in the threads too. I think we've maxed
out. Awesome.
But thank you everyone for hopping on. We will see everyone next Tuesday. I think they're going to do an end of the month call next Tuesday. We're already there. Crazy. All right. Well, everyone have a wonderful